Look at him. He just looks like he's aura farming, just sitting there. This man that I'm chatting with today needs no introduction. I'm here with the one and only the GOAT, Dakota Robertson. I'm very happy that I was able to get Dakota on here and pick his brain on some of the cool stuff that he has been doing, is doing, and all of that good stuff. So before we dive into anything, for those people who are living under a rock and have no idea who you are, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, what makes you so awesome, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on. This is cool. I like having my brain picked. Yeah, my name is Dakota. I am a 27-year-old Canadian. I used to be an electrician, tried all these different jobs, stumbled upon Twitter in 2020, thought people writing online. I think it's okay. That was cool. I want to do that. And so that kind of got me in more into the writing space and social media. Dropped out of college, quit my job at Domino's at the time, and just went all in. And eventually started writing content for other people and growing their accounts, doing something called ghostwriting, and scaled my business with ghostwriting. And then I started teaching people how I did what I did, and now I'm here. That's the quick and dirty.
Dude, I love that. The Dominoes to Success arc, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
That is
God,
awesome.
I hated Domino's.
You're not one of those guys that, like, spins the pizza around, just goes above and beyond on, like, Instagram and that kind of thing, doing the pizza?
God, no. I got that job so I could listen to courses while I was working because I would just have my AirPods in, and then I would just listen to courses on how to grow on Twitter or like business or branding and get paid while I'm doing it.
Like that, actually. That's a little hack right there. If you need a little extra income, but you're still on the grind, go work at Domino's and just
Yeah,
pop the AirPods in. I love that.
literally. Yeah.
I just wanna dive right into it and just ask you, what do you think it takes to be a top 1% creator online?
I think you have to do interesting stuff outside of content. You obviously need something to write about. And so if you have these experiences, like stories where you're working on something and you can document the journey, that inherently makes you more interesting than somebody that's just giving how to tips or lessons. So I think really just embodying an interesting life and sharing that online is just going to make people more interested in you, obviously. And as we progress more and more with AI, there's just going to be more content that's more educational. It's not going to stand out as much because there's just going to be so much of it. And so the thing that's going to differentiate people is their ability to tell stories, their ability to show their personality. So really like leaning into that aspect is going to be important. And that takes time. Like you got to learn how to tell stories. You got to learn what makes for a good story and recognize the parts of your life that you can share that would be insightful or entertaining to other people.
What's your current kind of perspective on AI in the content creation space? Do you see it as something that's a threat? Is it something positive? Like, where are you kind of at with, thinking about AI?
Yeah, so I think there's two camps. There's people that are like, okay, just get AI to do everything, and then there's people that are the purists and like, oh, don't touch it at all, like it's slop, whatever. And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, where you're not using AI to outsource your thinking, you're using AI to assist your writing. And so a lot of people, they're not using AI and they're going to get lapped by the people that are utilizing AI. It's kind of like those that were resistant to computers back in the day and the internet, and they just stuck with typewriters and mail or whatever. And then there's the people that are just using AI for everything, and it just takes out the soul in their writing, and they're not even using it right, so it just looks like dog doo doo. So I think there's the people in the middle that are really going to excel and beat everybody because they have the quality and the quantity. So using AI to help you ideate, do market research, generate a rough draft outline, but then using their brain to recognize, okay, what's a good and bad output? Or how can I insert my own anecdotes or stories? Or how can I prompt this in a way so it has the full context and it can actually have a good output? A lot of people are just saying, write me tweets, write me content, but that's not a good prompt because it's so generic. But the people that understand, okay, what makes for a good tweet, what makes for a good LinkedIn post, how can I give context on my story? You're going to get a lot better output than just the crap that people are using. So I think it's definitely making the landscape more competitive, but it's also opening up a lot more opportunities for people to level up their content by telling stories and just doubling down on that aspect. Because that's going to be the main differentiator. Everyone's going to be able to 5 tips, how to's, all that stuff. But your ability to share who you are and your humanity is going to be your kind of unique mechanism.
I think that's one of the interesting things that a lot of people do approach it as kind of like a vending machine, like a content vending machine where it's like, all right, I put my prompt in and I get my slop out. I'm like, all right, this is good to go, you know? But knowing what a good output actually looks like, that's kind of hard because a lot of people post stuff and I swear they think it's a banger and it's just the most like generic canned stuff ever, you know? But being able to use the AI, kind of like you said, in a workflow that brings out your creativity, brings out your stories and that kind of thing, allows you to share more. Good writers are just going to, like you said, lap everyone else. Because if you're a good writer and you utilize AI, you're just going to blow everyone out of the water. But you have to develop the skills to know what good content looks like and the everything behind the good content. You have to understand it, not just see it, and then also know how to use the AI. You've mentioned storytelling a few times now and the power of, bringing in your story, being authentic in the content that you create. When was the first time that you shared a story and realized, like, holy crap, like this stuff pops off, you know?
Yeah, I actually remember the first time quite clearly. So it was I woke up at like 5 a.m. because I was gonna go to the gym with my buddy for 6. I remember reading this post by Ed Lattimore on Twitter about how the loss of fathers in the family unit affected the youth, has been affecting the youth. And reading that article really resonated with me. So I quote tweeted it, and then I wrote a thread and I tagged Ed Lattimore in it. And I talked about my experience growing up without a father and like what I had to learn or what were the main lessons I learned, just like kind of teaching myself masculinity. And so I shared some of the elements of my story there. And I was rushing to write it because I had to go to the gym. So I was scared to hit post because it's like very vulnerable. But I was like, screw it, just hit post, didn't look. And at that time I only had like a couple hundred followers and I got crap engagement. And I was like, screw it, I'm just posting this. When I'm at the gym or after I was done at the gym, I look at my post and it like blew up. For me, it was like 110 likes or something. So for me, it was like crazy when I was normally getting 5. I was like, holy crap, it's crazy. And then I had people messaging me saying how much they related to this and how it affected them. Ed Lattimore retweeted it too. So that's why it like really blew up for me. But that's when I really realized the power of storytelling and how I can write words on a screen and some people on the other side of the world would see that and it creates an emotional response. And I thought that was really cool. It created such a response where they felt a need to message me. And so I just realized, wow, like if you tell stories that resonate and you actually show vulnerability and show who you are, it can have a 10x, 20x impact rather than just writing some platitudes or tweets. So yeah, it was cool for me to see. And then I lean more into that going forward. And that's a huge part of my brand is sharing my lessons or takeaways from the hardships I've gone through. And that's honestly, that's like a big part of like why people choose to become clients is because they resonate with who I am and my story.
That's crazy cool. I love that. I've talked to quite a few people, and I'm actually including myself in this as well, who feel like they don't have any stories to share. Whether they like, oh, I have no cool experiences, or my life is boring, or whatever it is. So my question is kind of two sides to that coin. First of all, how do you find and know what a good story looks like in your own life? And how do you go about kind of like experience maxing? Going out and doing things that give you story.
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing I'd recommend is reading the book Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. I think that's the best book I've read on storytelling. But one thing he says in there is doing a thing called homework for life. So at the end of the day, just short sentences, like 1-3 sentences max, just about different events that happen throughout the day. And they don't have to be these grand stories or anything crazy, just what you did day to day, like a short bullet points. But what that does is it starts to help you recognize possible stories throughout your life. And it's like training your brain to recognize things while it happens. And that's been a huge thing for me. And a lot of people, they think, yeah, they need these grandiose stories for them to be entertaining, but oftentimes it's the average mundane stories that resonate with people because they're more relatable. And if you can find an insight or some kind of takeaway or some lesson from the mundane and you can extrapolate it to uh, a, a grander or something that like is something that relates to what you talk about online or like some kind of overall lesson, I think that really helps. So for example, I was getting a haircut one day and I had to make a podcast in like 20 minutes. And so I'm rushing to drive home. And on the way home, like it should be only like a 5-minute drive, but there's all this traffic because it's rush hour. And so I go out of my barber, take a left, and there's a bunch of traffic. I'm like, screw this, do a U-turn. I go the other way. There's a bunch of traffic there too. So I do another U-turn and I do another one. I'm just like going back and forth because I'm like trying to like beat the traffic and get home for this podcast. The time's ticking down. I'm like, oh shit, like I'm gonna be late. I hate being late for stuff. And I'm trying to rush home. And I'm like going and trying to do all these little shortcuts and go home in these different ways, but it's all just backed up. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna sit in traffic. I'm gonna go this one way, and I'm just gonna stick with it. Finally, get home, barely make it on time. But I was looking at that and was like, that's very interesting because with my journey in online business, it was the same thing. I'm trying all these different shortcuts to get to my destination. I would try something, I'd go for a little bit. I'm like, this isn't fast enough. I'd turn around, go a completely new route, same thing. And I realized, it's going to take long either way. It's because I keep switching that's taking way longer than it needs to be. And so I just took that lesson and I extrapolated it to online business and my journey, and I related it with a story. And so if you can start training your brain to recognize stories with that homework for life stuff, you're going to notice more of that stuff happening day to day. And then you could just tell stories from the mundane and just use that as a extrapolation to a larger lesson. Doing stuff like that, I highly recommend. Yeah, like another thing is like looking at asking yourself questions. So, what were the significant events that shaped my worldview? What were the biggest mistakes in my life? What were the biggest wins in my life? What were the significant events that happened during the ages of 5 to 10 or 10 to 16 or whatever? And just like going and sitting down for an hour or two, just like asking yourself these questions, or even ask ChatGPT to prompt you for questions that will come up with stories. But I think the biggest thing is just realizing a lot of the mundane things that happen to you, or the things you classify as mundane, there's stories in there. You just have to recognize what the story is and that it's actually interesting.
I think it's a fantastic example of a powerful lesson in a very normal type of setting. But you're right, that recognition of, wait a minute, that's just like that moment just happened and there's a deeper principle behind it. And then sharing that, I think that's very powerful. Continuing then with the theme of stories, I'm curious a bit more about your story as well. What made you go down the path of entrepreneurship? Because you mentioned you were working at the Domino's, you were an electrician, like all this kind of stuff. What made you think like, all right, screw this, I'm going to go all in on, the online writing gig or whatever it was?
So at the time, I didn't really appreciate it. But when I was young, my mom she was a waitress and she worked a ton to support me and my brother. But she eventually started selling chips and pop, or soda, I guess Americans call it, on the side of the road, like by our house. She got like this little stand, this dinky table, and she just put some chips and soda on the stand and had a sign like, $3 or $2 for this, and started selling on the side of the road. And she would make sales on like the side of the road, and then eventually cops shut her down because she didn't have a permit. So she ended up buying a hot dog cart and started doing a hot dog cart vending business outside of one of the grocery stores, and she started making decent money doing that. And then she got a spot downtown, got a few spots downtown after a while, then started doing the nightclubs after during the night when everyone's drunk and wants food. And she started making good money, and she like had really good spots. But she told me from a young age, she's like, Dakota, never work for somebody else. You're never gonna be free that way and make good money. Start your own business. At the time I was like, yeah, whatever, cool. I just want to go play video games. But she like really drilled it in my head about learning to think for yourself, have good values, and build your own business. And she showed me with her actions too what was possible. And so when I got to the age of 18, I'm working 84 hours a week as an electrician in the freezing cold. I'm hating my job. I'm surrounded by miserable people. I hated it. It was really depressing, and I hate being told what to do. And so I was like, what the hell? Like, what, is there more to life? And at the time, I was listening to a podcast, a guy named Jordan Harbinger, but he talked about how he went to Vietnam and changed his life, loved it. It was amazing. So at the time, I was like, screw it. I'm young. I got nothing to lose. So I booked a trip to Southeast Asia, and I did a month in Cambodia, a month in Vietnam, and a month in Thailand, and absolutely fell in love with the freedom aspect, being able to go where I wanted, do what I wanted, not have a boss. And I just thought I need to figure out a way to live a life where this is possible, because I just love it. I felt so free. It was the first time I ever actually felt true freedom. And so when I got back, I was just trying different side hustles like Amazon FBA, blogging, buying iPhones, repairing them, and then flipping them on Facebook, like all these like different stuff. None of them ever stuck because I just didn't care about them that much. But I eventually found Twitter because I in 2018 I started investing in crypto, and that's where all the news was. But then I came across a course, how to grow your Twitter. It's like, oh, some $40 course. Like, what the hell? What do I got to lose? And little did I know that course would change my life. It was a completely shit course, but it introduced me to people like Dan Coe and all these like Twitter bros that were showing how they're making money online and their philosophies and stuff. And they kind of indoctrinated me. And so at the time, I was in my second year of college, and I was like, I'm dropping out. I'm going to just, give this a go, because the risk to reward ratio would never be better. I don't have kids at the time. I don't have like all these responsibilities. Like, I could screw up and I'd be okay. So I just said, college is always going to be there. I'll always have a job if I would need it, but I'm going to take this risk and go all in on myself and make this work. So that's what I did, and it was one of the best choices in my life.
That's crazy. I think it takes, I mean, you're totally right in saying that in the moment where you're at, that was probably a really good time to make that decision, but it's still hard to make that decision. And I could imagine that it probably was tough after making that decision right up until it started working to be like, why am I even doing this? Like, this isn't going to work. Why did I make this decision? So run me through the moment when you made your first like dollar online. What did that feel like? What did that change for you?
It was like crack. No,
Has it
it
been
was
anything
great. I
better than
remember.
that?
Yeah, no, dude, it really like, I think that was one of the most impactful moments for me, because it showed me this was actually possible. So, if you can make $1 online, it's like you could probably make 100 or 1,000. But it was just like such a paradigm shift going from zero to, I made $5 in my first go. But what it was an affiliate sale for Modern Mastery, a community by Dan Coe. And yeah, I got someone to sign up for it. I made $5. I remember messaging Dan because I was so excited. I was like, dude, I just made my first $5 online. Like, this is crazy. And it was just so cool for me. It just made me really like value it, as is it, even though it was only $5, it was just like what it represented for me. And it was, yeah, it was crazy. And then I landed like a copywriting client. They only paid me like $110 for like a 2-week project. It was a nightmare, but it was a good experience too. And then eventually landed my first ghostwriting client like a few months later for $3,000 a month right out the gate. I was like, holy shit. And then landed a client for 5K a month and a 3K a month client. I was like, damn, this is crazy. Going from like $5 or $100 to that, it was like, that's nuts. But yeah, it was that $5 affiliate sale. That was the first internet money I got.
That is crazy,
Yeah.
especially going that far back with Dan as well. Would you say that Dan was one of the big kind of influences for you as you were going on your entrepreneurship journey? And were there any others, and what kind of impact did they have on you?
Yeah, 100%. I think Dan had the biggest one for me because I just resonated with him right away. He was just a young account at the time, only 20K followers on Twitter. And at the time I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this guy's a superstar. I just really like looked up to him and I resonated with his writing and his philosophy on stuff. And he was the first mentor I ever invested in. And it really helped me because I mean, it was a significant amount of money for me. Like I drained my bank account at the time, but that lit a fire under my ass and helped me just start taking action because before I just procrastinate with courses or free YouTube videos. But the big thing was like he believed in me and he was just like he just gave me the way, like the guidance. And I just had to execute and I did and it turned out okay. So Dan, I think, had the biggest influence on me. I actually ended up living with him for 5 months in Texas. I'm Canadian, so I can only spend like 6 months in the US and then they kick you out. But that was cool too. Just like seeing how he operates, how he thinks, his routines. Like this guy's autistic as hell. Like it's no surprise he's super successful. So he's just like locked in on his habits and how he treats his body and his routine. Very, very autistic guy, very stoic, but he's funny. I brought out like some of the inner potato in him, but yeah, no, he definitely changed my life, and I will always be grateful for him for that. But yeah, Dan, my buddy Joey Justice, he was also one of the, I think he was one of the first people I reached out to on Twitter, but he was really cool. We're still friends to this day. He's super funny, very appreciative of him. And he's helped me a ton with my ghostwriting agency and just being a good friend. So he was a huge impact on me. My buddy Talon and Dale. Talon was like one of my first ghostwriting coaching clients, and he became one of my best friends, him and Dale. So we actually moved in together and to Panama because I was getting my Panama residency. So they came with me. That was an amazing time in my life. We did some crazy stuff. Um, but those are like the main ones that come to mind.
I could imagine that the vibes in Panama and in Texas would have been crazy cool.
Yeah, it was cool because it's like a lot of people in the creator or entrepreneurship space, they're the black sheep to their friends or family. So when you're surrounded by other people that don't think you're crazy and can actually understand what you're building and what you're doing, it's a good energy. And you like wake up, you're like, work with your friends and you're not in like sure you like party sometimes and all that, but it's mainly like you're all building something and it's really cool. It's really encouraging and it makes it feel like you're on a journey together. And I think that's something that a lot of men nowadays lack is that adventure or that independence. And I think a lot of people are unhappy because they're working these jobs and they're getting told what to do. And it's like a lot of men, they don't resonate with that. They just want something where it's like they're building something of their own and they can own that and they can benefit from that and they're they're stepping into like that independence. And it's something that's lacking. At least it was for me. So yeah, like taking that risk and building something of my own and having friends along the way to help it was huge for me. It was a big confidence booster, but also just purposeful was a big thing.
One of the things that gets kind of thrown around, one of those overused platitudes is that your network is your net worth kind of thing, and that you
But yeah,
you rise to the level of your friends or blah blah blah. I know the common platitude stuff, but I think that there is a lot of truth to that, especially if you're trying to build something by yourself or if you're a guy trying to figure something out. Having just a couple of guys that can support you, root for you, work with you on stuff, having that kind of connection, that brotherhood, that makes a huge difference. Instead of just being
100%.
in the trenches, stuck in the mud, doing your own thing. Like that, it's tough. I think that a lot of people get drawn in by the promise of freedom and independence and everything of entrepreneurship, but they're not mentally and emotionally prepared for everything that it takes to get there. Where there are seasons where things just don't work out, or maybe you're, working on it by yourself or whatever it is. But getting to that level requires a lot of sacrifice that I think a lot of people aren't willing to make. And that makes it hard to try to get that breakthrough when you don't want to make those sacrifices, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was talking about this yesterday actually, where a lot of people they're very comfortable with their life, but they're not happy. So they work a job, it's like good enough, and they're kind of comfortable, but it's like they want more and they want, to make 10K a month and, whatever, yada, yada. And so they like start online business, but it's hard. Like it's obviously, it takes consistency. There's a lot of discipline, and the traditional path of school and working a job doesn't really train you for the level of discipline you need. And so it's like when people are faced with this hardship, it's like it isn't as easy as the 23-year-old guru told me. They're like, well, I got this comfortable job, and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go back to that. And it's a big thing people need is like that why. They need to understand why the hell they're even doing this. Is it for their daughter, maybe to prove their parents wrong, maybe to prove themselves right, whatever the reason is, but there needs to be like a strong emotional reason why you're doing it. You need to understand what that is. You need to channel that emotion, because it's not enough to say, oh, I want to make 10K a month. It's like, okay, why? Like, what's the emotional reason? And not like Rolexes, not Lambos, but like deep down emotionally, like, why do you want this? For me, I couldn't stand the thought of working a job for the rest of my life, being told what to do, being surrounded by miserable people, being told when to wake up, where I could live, all this. I was scared shitless of that thought, and that's what fueled me to keep going. Because yeah, there was times I didn't feel like writing. There's times I didn't feel like showing up. There's times I felt like a complete potato going on sales calls. But my fear of regret was stronger than my fear of failure or fear of cringe, and that's what pushed me through. But a lot of people don't have a strong enough why. And so if you think about like levels of priority, if you prioritize comfort or you prioritize other people's opinions of you, and that takes precedence over your desire to live a life of freedom or your desire to do whatever, it's like, okay, and then you're going to default to this. And so you have to have like a really strong North Star, or else you're just going to give up when things get tough. And I think a lot of people, they either don't have clarity on that, or it's not strong enough, or they just place too much value on the things that are going to hold them back. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, just understanding, if you don't want it bad enough, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with like wanting to work a job or not wanting to like put in the work it requires to actually build a business. But yeah, it's like a lot of people they're like slapped in the face when they realize, oh shit, I gotta do stuff consistently. Crazy.
Yep. Yep. No, 100%. 100%. It's it's hard as well, as kind of adding on to that, because you kind of mentioned this as well. This is not as easy as the 23-year-old guru is trying to pretend, act like it is. It's hard as well because in the online game, you want to, like Hormozy value equation, you want to make it as easy as possible, right? Like the result that you want with the least amount of effort possible. And so a lot of people are out there peddling these things through their courses or their products or, a lifestyle or whatever it is, making it look as easy as possible. People buy into that. And then when they actually try, they're like, oh, wait a sec. I have to do this for like this long and put in this much effort
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. And then again, if you don't have that strong why, you're just going to flake out. You're just not going to do it. And it's
Yeah.
kind of sad, if because if you're willing to say to yourself, like, okay, I'm comfortable where I am and I'm happy with that, then that's great. But if you're in this weird, like, middle ground, like you're saying, where like you kind of want it, but you kind of don't, you're basically just setting yourself to be miserable because you're not going to put in enough effort to really see the success and the breakthrough, but you're also not going to be comfortable where you are. And you're just in this weird middle ground that takes a deep level of really understanding yourself to be like, okay, that hurts a lot more than the work I have to put in to get there, kind of like what you were saying. But it takes a level of self-awareness to make that progress. And unfortunately, not everyone does that and don't reach that potential that they're capable of reaching and end up kind of in the miserable middle, which is sad. It's kind of sad to see.
Yeah. There's also like, I think a lot of people have the potential, but they just don't believe in themselves. And so they cut themselves short. Like one thing that was really useful for me was just having a mentor that told me like, just do this, you'll be fine. Like you're gonna figure it out. And it was like people believed in me more than I believed in myself, and that was huge for me. And I think that's why it's important to have a community or like have people in your corner, or just be delusional and have that self belief. But yeah, I agree. I think it's sad when like people have the potential, they just don't have the, I guess, the mindset for it yet at that time, but they could totally do it if they did.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say are the daily habits that have been most crucial to your success?
I think one was journaling, and that was because it gave me a lot of clarity of thought and helped me process my ideas or my emotions and just develop my self awareness. So not a it, yes, it helped me in business, but like in life overall, like that really helped me. So I started that when I was 18. Reading books, thinking about like the information diet. So I don't read nearly as much as I used to, but it really like set the foundations for me, like reading those mindset books or stuff on business. But just really training my brain to think differently or see the bigger picture, what was possible, was really big for me. Exercise was a huge thing for me because of the not just because of the energy and like physical benefits, but what it taught me about life. It's like, okay, if you just show up, do this thing consistently, and even though you don't see results immediately, over time you see the results. It's like, oh, you just translate those lessons to business. And it really taught me a lot about discipline and work ethic. So that was huge. And then allowing myself to be bored as well. So, going on walks without my phone or, just meditating. It was a big one for me, allowing me to sit with my thoughts and just process things. That was big. And I think another thing was just like doing things that help with stress tolerance. So again, meditation or working out were big for me because it is stressful. You're doing stuff you're not used to, and you're gonna suck at stuff, and you got to be able to tolerate stress. And so you need outlets for that. You need to be able to process stuff. So that was great for me. And making a habit of just leaning into the uncomfortable. So, sales calls are super uncomfortable for me, but I just kept leaning into it, and I just gave myself permission to screw up and not be the best. But I use that as a drive to, get better at stuff and just really just lean into the uncomfortable and realize this is what I need to feel to get better. Like every growth stage, I've had to do things I've never done before and had to get better at it. And that's what really propelled me forward, is like leaning into the uncomfortable. And I mean, obviously, like writing online, like making that a habit. I had this thing in my head, I'm like, if I don't write every single day, my head explodes. And so just having that like mentality with writing, or I guess anything, it makes you consistent. And it's obviously like a, dramatic way of thinking about it, but it's like, even if it's just showing up and writing one sentence, the fact that you still wrote every day helps you develop the identity that you are a writer, or you are a, fitness person, or you are a reader. And just showing up, even if just like the bare minimum, is it's super crucial, because when you have the identity of that person, like I am this, therefore I do X, uh, it just becomes a part of who you are. Like I am a jack nerd, so like I'm gonna go to the gym today because that's just what I do. So I got that from James Clear. I'm pretty sure his Atomic Habits book, and it's been really helpful for me when creating habits and being consistent. I would say those are the main things.
That's honestly a crazy cool insight, but also I feel like a little masterclass in the kinds of habits that you need. What I liked the most is that like 90% of those were like personal, internal type things, or mental, physical, that kind of thing. It's not even about practicing your skills or doing all of that kind of stuff. It's just, how do I master myself as like the vessel that's going to make this happen, I guess, to kind of get a little philosophical about it. But so I love that a lot of the focus is on that. And I think that is a crucial thing to be able to do to make any significant progress.
Yeah, it's like the foundation to anything, right? Your mindset, your body, your I mean, that's gonna just determine like how you show up in every regard of life. So yeah, it's like a lot of those are the basic, read, journal, write stuff, Tony Robbins. But it's cliche for a reason. It's like that stuff works.
100%. 100%. Okay. Sort of bring our conversation to the last kind of phase of things that I would love to chat with you. I want to talk about like creating content, the creator economy, growing online, all of that kind of stuff, right? So to start, what do you think that most people don't understand about like creating content online and just online business in general?
I think what works now won't always work later. And when something is working, like you need to double down on that. That's something I didn't do as well as I should have. Like there's periods of time where like growth was super easy and I didn't realize at the time like, oh, it's always going to be like this. And I didn't go as hard as I should have during that period. And therefore I missed out on a lot of gains when it wasn't as easy or when that format wasn't working. So that was one thing. Like if something's working, you need to like quadruple down on it. And that's true with business or content. Another thing is I'll tell a quick story. So like on Instagram, I grew to like 180K followers in like a month or something crazy. I was just like at the time the Twitter screenshots, tweets were going viral, like hella viral. And like that's how I just at the time I was like, oh, Instagram's easy because I just started. I didn't know at the time. I was just like going viral, like this shit's easy, whatever. And then I was doing really well on Instagram, and then these new trend came up where it was like these animated videos of I don't know animations, and then you like give a narrative over it, and those were going really well. So I did some of those, and those went like super viral, hundreds of thousands of likes, not even impressions, and just like got me another like 60,000 followers. But the problem was like I didn't normally create that type of content, and so when I went to go do my normal type of content like that weren't the animated videos, the people that followed me for the animated videos didn't engage with that, and there was like this rift. So I grew an audience that liked one type of content and another style of content, and it screwed up my engagement. I got a lot of like unfollows and my engagement was just like tanking. And so like what does that signal to the platform if people that follow you aren't engaging with your stuff? It's like this isn't good, don't show it to more people. And so my engagement like kept tanking, I kept losing followers, and I realized like I just chased a trend just for the vanity metrics, just because it was what was working for everybody else. But that, yeah, that grew me followers, but it wasn't in alignment with what I wanted to do long term. And so it screwed me over, and it ended up like just killing my account on Instagram because I just created the like content like I didn't want to create, and it attracted an audience that didn't come for the content that I normally create. And so just understanding like, you don't want to chase trends. Like if there's a way you can tie it back to what you normally talk about and like do it smoothly, you want to do that. But don't chase trends. Like you want to find ways to incorporate what you talk about into trends maybe, but you want people to follow you for you, who you are and like what you talk about. But yeah, chasing trends was a big mistake for me on Instagram. But yeah, it taught me a valuable lesson.
But
But I think
num
like people should lean into their story and storytelling like going forward. Like definitely double down on that. It's going to be more and more important as AI floods the content realm.
yeah, it's hard to not jump on trends because big number go burr, you know. And
Yeah.
you just get the dopamine hit from all the big numbers.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Is there any, from my experience, when I scroll through X or I scroll through LinkedIn or whatever, I feel like there's a ton of rehashed basic advice on how to grow your account and that kind of thing. Is there any kind of growth advice that you just don't like, that you just hate, or that's just overdone or anything like that?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that are just doing the how to and the tips style content. And it's just like so played out at this point. Like no one information is easily accessible now. Like anyone can go to ChatGPT. Everyone's like giving information, all that. It's like, what's the thing that's going to differentiate you? It's going to be the packaging of the information. So inserting your personality. So like me, for example, I like to use my humor. So on LinkedIn, which is a very like unhumorous place, very like tight ass HR like style people, it's like I was thinking about like what's my differentiator? How do I differentiate myself from everybody else? It's going to be leaning into my kind of polarizing humor and just saying dumb jokes and stuff like that. So like I made a hook where it's like how I grew to 74,000 followers on LinkedIn, and then in brackets without showing my boobs. It's just like kind of like a dumb joke, and then that pissed off a bunch of women. The I didn't mean it as like a jab to women, but I was like, like because I got like big boobs because I work out, and like it's like a joke between people that I know. I just thought it was funny, but some people took offense to that. I didn't care. It's like whatever, project
Rage
on you.
bait for the numbers.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I just thought it was like a funny remark, and then I just like do stuff like that, and it like rubs people the wrong way. But it's like people that get it, they think it's hilarious, and so like I'm not afraid of being polarizing. I'm not doing it for the sake of being polarizing. I'm just doing it because it's just like how my humor is. So like leaning into what makes you different, whether it's how you present stuff or your story or whatever about you, like you need to double down on that. So like each one of you listening, like you have a unique thing about you. You just maybe you don't recognize it yet, but it could be your humor, it could be your stories, it could be your way of thinking or using silly analogies like stuff like that. Like I'll use the analogy a lot, whipped cream on dog shit, because I just think it's a funny visual. But like if you're explaining things, how can you make it entertaining or at least interesting for people and just do it in a different way? So like if you're saying like 3 tips to grow on Instagram or 3 tips to do whatever. It's like, that's boring. But you can say, here's how to grow faster than an OnlyFans chick on Instagram or without shaking your ass or like something like that. It's like, how can you be different? That's the main thing. And so that could be with your words or it could be with visuals. I don't know, just different ways. That's the main thing. It's like, how can you stand out? How can you still be useful and give value to people? But how do you do it in a way that is different as a pattern interrupt? Another thing I think is just dumb advice is, I mean, I just kind of said it, but people say just give value and you'll grow. It's like, what does that even mean? Right? Like just give value. And so the way I like to think about it, value is whenever you help someone solve a pain point or move closer to a desired outcome. Because at the end of the day, we're people and people are selfish and we want to follow people, engage with people that benefit us. And so at the end of the day, you want to be useful to people. That's what's going to make them care about who you are. And then if you're sharing stories over time, you're going to create an emotional connection and they're going to relate to you or aspire to be like you. And then you could talk about whatever you want and people are just going to engage or buy from you because they're invested in you as a person, not just what you say. So I guess like the overall theme is like tell more stories, be different, lean into your personality.
How would you advise a new creator or maybe even someone that's just kind of plateauing to nail their positioning and their messaging? Because I feel like a lot of creators that I see, they just post random crap all the time.
Mm.
People don't really know what kind of box to put them in. The algorithm doesn't know what kind of box to put them in, and so they don't really go anywhere despite pouring in all this effort, right? You were just talking about how your personality, the stories that you share, the way that you get people's attention, the value that you give, how you help people, all of that is a huge part of making sure that you are connecting with the right kinds of people and you're able to grow and monetize, right? So, what's kind of the 80/20 in your mind of nailing your positioning and the way that you're sharing your message?
Yeah, I think number one is I would think about who am I trying to attract and what are their problems? What are their desires? And how can I make my content as a bridge between their pain to their desires? And just like becoming useful is like the main thing because when you're useful, you're valued. And when you're valued, they follow you and they're more likely to become clients. And then also thinking about what do you do differently with your service or your offer that other people don't do? And how can you emphasize that in your content? So if I'm like starting out, um, as like let's say a writer or a ghostwriter or whatever, and there's like a bunch of established agencies that whatever, I would talk about the problem about agencies and working with agencies as a ghostwriter, because they're just going to treat you as another number, and you need somebody that's actually focused on you and not just having like 10 different clients. You need someone that understands your brand's going to take the time to understand it and actually like be focused on you and like lean into that. So like what are the things that you can do that other people can't? Or maybe you have a certain method of doing things and like maybe you're a ghostwriter and you're like, you know, the problem with a lot of founders when it comes to content is yeah, they create how-to content or whatever, but there's no emotional connection and you need to tell stories. You need a ghostwriter that will tell your story and do it in a way that's doesn't sound like AI crap and is actually reflective of you and your values. Because when you do that, people become invested in you as a person and not just, what you talk about. And that means if they're invested in you as a person, they're going to be more invested around your product. Like you think about Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, people connect with them, and therefore they have the brand association of the positive feelings that that person creates for them. They associate that with their product, and they create customers that way. So you can lean into that in uh, your content. But it's like you need to think about what are your advantages, what makes you different, what makes you unique, whether it's your personality, your way of doing things, stuff like that. And you need to consistently talk about that in your content, because you think about Bud Light or McDonald's, like why do they spend tens of millions of dollars on ads running the same slogans or the same message? Because it takes consistent times of the messaging being repeated to actually like lock into somebody's brain. And so you need to do that. Think of that with your content. Like, what are the main things? Like, list it out and then tell different stories or different ways of things, but have the same insight or the same lesson or the same message. But do that just consistently and like change up the packaging. I think that's big. And then also, it's like one of your biggest differentiators is just going to be like who you are as a person. Like, there can be a, like 100 people with the same offer, but if someone emotionally connects with you as a person and like how you show up, then they're probably going to go with you opposed to other people, because that emotion is so wired into us as humans. Like, we first were engaged emotionally and then we justify logically. So I think really like showing up and leaning into your values, your polarizing takes, what you stand against, what you stand for, like all of that, and just like consistently like talking about that in your content. Because everyone sounds like a damn robot online, man. Like, it's just they got a gun to their head, or they're just boring, and there's just like no soul to their writing. Like, I don't know a lot of these accounts and like what they stand for or who they are. So just like leaning into that aspect is crucial.
You will post 5 times per week, or else, your family
Yeah.
dies, and then they post the
Yeah,
most
exactly.
generic stuff. No, 100%, 100%. Um, to kind of wrap up our discussion on content, obviously you're a pretty, like top 1% creator, absolutely killing it on a bunch of different platforms. Run me through in the broad strokes what your kind of workflow or framework is for creating content from ideation to hitting publish.
Yeah, so I just think about like what are the problems that I used to have, and how can I basically create content that would have been helpful for me 7 days ago, 7 months ago, 2 years ago, and just like create content in a way that's entertaining and shows who I am, while also being useful. Like, I want each piece of my content to have some kind of actionable takeaway or a lesson for somebody where it benefits them. So I'm always trying to think in the service of other people. Like, how can I leave people like 0.1% better than before they read my post? And so if you always have the audience in mind, then it just becomes a lot clearer what content you need to create. It's like asking yourself, why should they care? Even when you're coming up with the ideas, but also when you're writing it. So why should they care about the hook? Why should they care about the second sentence? Why should they keep reading? Why should they like this post? Why should they comment? Why should they do X, Y, Z? When you're constantly asking yourself that, it forces you to cut fluff. It forces you to refine your ideas and create content that is a lot more meaningful to other people and in service to them. So those are the main things I keep in mind. And then also the getting inspiration from other creators. So if I see a post pop off, I'm like, what's the main idea behind this post? And what's my take on this idea? Like, what does this idea mean to me? And how can I share my own take on this? So I'm taking their idea or the main idea from their post, and I'm applying my own take and my own structure. Or a different way of looking at it, okay, this post went viral for them. They use this format. How can I take this format and apply my own idea to it? So it's not taking both, because then it would just be like plagiarizing, but it's taking one element and then reworking it and giving your own sauce, and just adding your own element to it, because then it's validated, right? You're just mixing it up.
That's fire. I'm a big fan of the pre-validated ideas. I think, especially for myself personally, I very often catch myself thinking like I have to have a completely original banging idea that no one else has ever thought of before that's just gonna pop off. Otherwise, I cannot post. And then take a step back, and be like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. It doesn't have to be quite that crazy. I can look through what's already working for people and then put my own kind of spin on it and apply it to my own audience and whatever it is. Looking ahead to the future of online business in general, the creator space online and that kind of thing. What do you think the biggest opportunity is right now that creators should be getting on board with or being aware of?
I think really focusing on how to use AI, because it's going to get to a point where the people that are proficient with AI and understand content and how to use it, they're just going to run laps around the people that don't. And it's just like, it's not going away. Like, you need to learn to use it. It's like the internet back in the day. If you don't learn to use it, you're just going to get lapped. And so you just got to spend time, like learn how to prompt, learn how to use the workflows, learn just what softwares do you use, like how to use it. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like I use Claude and ChatGPT primarily, but they're super useful. Like they 10x my output. And if you think about that over the long enough time horizon, if you're competing with someone that has 10x the output, you're not going to win. So I think AI is going to be the destruction of humanity, but what, like, it's not going anywhere. Like, you just gotta learn with the times. It's like you might as well use the damn tool before Terminator shows up. But I kind of say that half jokingly. I don't know. But yeah, learning how to use AI and learning what makes for good prompting, and also that isn't an excuse to just outsource your thinking to it. I think that's just a huge issue. But you need to learn for what makes for good writing or good content and bad content. And you want to combine your studying or skills for content. You want to combine that with AI, and then you're going to create some really cool stuff that you never even thought was possible. You're going to be way faster with your workflow, and you're just going to tighten that feedback loop. Like, you can create content faster, you can post faster, get feedback faster, iterate faster, and just get better and better and better. It's great for ideating too. Like, I've come up with ideas or angles for things I wouldn't have thought of without using AI. And so using it to assist your thinking, not outsource your thinking. Like, that's the main thing you should take away. But yeah, definitely we have this unique opportunity with AI, and there's still going to be people resistant to it, and that's a great opportunity. But over the coming years, people are going to adopt AI more and more. So right now it's like, just take advantage of it while people are resistant to it.
100%. That's kind of how I see the use of AI, or its biggest value as well, as kind of as a bookend to the creative process, in the sense of use it for ideation, help you get the idea, the main structure, all of that kind of stuff. Do the actual writing and creating of the content yourself primarily, because you have the taste, the context, all of that stuff, and then have it give you feedback on the end. One of the things I enjoy doing is having kind of a persona outlined in a document of, the kind of person I'm trying to write to, and then asking AI, like, all right, as this person, what do you think about this post? Do you care about this post? Does this help you in some way? Kind of like what you were mentioning before. And having it give you feedback is really interesting. Be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, that is actually really stupid. I shouldn't say it like that," or whatever it is. But using it as a bookend of the creative process, I think is incredibly powerful. And I totally agree. You're just going to get gapped if you don't. You're just not going to make it. You're just not going to make it if you don't use it.
Yeah. NGMI.
NGMI. Okay, last question for you, Dakota. What do you think the difference is between someone who makes it and someone who doesn't? And what would you say to someone who doesn't really feel like they're making it right now or can't make it?
Honestly, I think it's your ability to do uncomfortable things and endure for a long enough period of time. And that comes back to having that strong why. Like, one thing I would recommend to most people is sit down with a journal and understand what's the thing you're moving away from, like what's the pain point, and actually like, viscerally feel it. But also, what's your ideal life and what are you moving toward? And just having a strong understanding of those two things, because there's going to be times where you don't feel like showing up. There's going to be times where you're going to feel like giving up, or, is this going to work out and all that. And that's totally normal. Like, that's actually par for the course. And those exact feelings that you feel are the exact reason why most people never make it, is because they just succumb to those feelings. But if you're willing to endure those and you're willing to understand that that's part of the journey, then when they show up, you're like, okay, I'm feeling this. That's okay. That's normal. But I have a strong enough why to actually endure this. And it's worth this pain I'm feeling is worth the sacrifice, because I know where I'm heading is going to be, worth, worth the journey. So really just getting clarity on that. And if you have to, remind yourself of it often. You can have a vision board on your, I don't know, your wall or your fridge, or even like on your iPhone. Like I had my iPhone wallpaper, like a certain revenue. It was like a certain number of followers on Twitter, and like a certain body, and like all these things, and it just reminded me constantly what I wanted, what my goals were. But just like viscerally feeling what you want from life, and moving toward that is huge. And surrounding yourself around people that don't view it as weird, or can understand, or aren't going to make fun of you for having these goals. And if you don't have those people, just focus on yourself. Like I was a loner for a while, and then I got an online business, and I started meeting people more and more. I started associating with those people. But I was like a loner in a coffee shop building my business, so working like 10, 12 hours a day. And like I, I I just would rather spend my time alone rather than be with people that aren't going to understand the vision, or are going to think I'm weird, or just someone that's delusional, because it can be really discouraging at the start. You're trying to believe in yourself, and that's hard enough at the start because you don't have the evidence. But then tell somebody your idea or what you're working toward, and they're like, "Oh, you sure about that? I don't know if that makes sense. Or you sure that's safe? Or maybe you should go back to college or whatever." And it can be really discouraging having that. So you need to just really cultivate your energy and make sure you're not letting people in that are going to be negative toward that. And surround yourself, when you find those friends, like surround yourself with them, and really like uplift each other. It's huge. And even like what I did, I would watch YouTube videos and just like program my brain, like Jordan Peterson, years ago. Like I would listen to a lot of his stuff, and it would help me. Or Alex Ramose's stuff, it was really useful early on. And just learning to guard my energy, and like what went into it, and what I fed my brain was huge. But a lot of it's just mindset. Like it all comes back to mindset. So
I love all of that. I think that's something that I needed to hear as well. So thank you for sharing that. And to just take a quick 30 seconds to glaze you up a little bit. I appreciate you coming on. You're someone that I remember seeing online when I first started on X like a year ago or something like that, and be like, holy crap. Like that dude is so freaking cool. Like he's like in a totally different universe, dude. Like what the heck?
yeah.
So to be able to sit down and chat with you today has been kind of surreal for me. And I appreciate you sharing so much just wisdom and insights. It's definitely one that I'm going to be re-listening to a bunch, not just while I'm editing, but afterwards as well, because I think you shared a lot of really amazing stuff. So thank you again for taking some time, for dropping some bars on here, and just for being a being a dang cool person and showing us how it's done online. I appreciate it.
Well, I thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate it. It's like a full circle thing for me. I remember when I was starting out, just like talking to a big creator felt like out of reach. And then, when they respond to me, I was like, oh shit, this is crazy. So it's cool. I can like do that for other people too. So I appreciate you having me on, and yeah, it's been an honor.
You're the goat, man. Thank you so much again. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.